goal is the lens of my experience. And so I would love to have someone look through the lens of their experience. Okay?
Yeah, I'll help.
All right.
I think we also need Jarrell on that committee. I mean, not to volunteer him in his
Oh,
absence, but
he should have.
yeah, it should have been here. Otherwise, but I think to have that legal perspective it, would also be important. And he did this work too.
So are they, can we clarify like what they just volunteered for?
So they would go through essentially our policy manual and, hone in on those that they believe were specifically related to equity, read through those and offer any recommendations, bring to us any questions they may have, because there may be things that aren't apparent, that maybe we need to provide some data or some additional information before they can kind of assess that. And then from that, we would make, I guess, secondary decisions about how we would want to proceed around that.
I was just looking at the policy manual and it's kind of organized. Like I would think that first one might be ones all related to students as opposed to
So that's 6,000 series, is that the one you're?
8,000.
8,000.
8,000?
As opposed to something like school board governance and operations, but I don't know necessarily, just off the top of my head.
So, yeah, so school board governance, probably not, except, well, and actually, there may be a few things in there, because I think that's where what I will say is they probably would still want to look at that. That may not be like a deep dive, but maybe just something that you scan through. But I would definitely, general administration, probably not. Physical management, I wouldn't think so. Student support services, that's a possibility. Facilities development, probably not. Personnel, I wouldn't think. Instruction, so that's where we're going to talk about grading, graduation, those types of things, so probably instruction. And then, again, I agree with you, students. And then once you click into them, and I'll do instruction because that's my area. So, you might know quickly that, field trips, probably not an area that you might go into deeply. But you might want to spend a little bit of time around gifted education. And there may be some things there that are pretty ubiquitous that maybe we would want to see some different language around. So, I don't think that this is kind of like a short-term endeavor. I think it's definitely much more long-term. And it may be that this subcommittee updates us once a month about where they are in terms of this work and what their recommendations are. Or maybe they will, add to the agenda. We've got a policy we'd like for everybody to take a look at. And so we would send it out. Everybody would look at that specific policy, and then that would be a topic of discussion. So however you guys wanted that to kind of roll out or take place, I think would work. And so for a couple of folks who came in just a couple of minutes ago, we are putting together a subcommittee to take a look at district policy, specifically looking through the lens of equity. And we've had one volunteer, and he's not here, so I'll tell him. And then we had 2 volunteers.
Can I join as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I will mention as well on the agenda for the board meeting tomorrow is a proposal for the school board to consider to allow the North Carolina School Boards Association to go through and look at our policy manual and bring it to tweak it, basically, to bring it into compliance to what their suggested policy manual is. And work with our policy committee to do that over the course of, it usually takes about a year to 18 months. So what we are challenged with as a district is, you can see all the different, thousands of series of policies, and being able to keep those updated has been very difficult. So we do have a proposal in front of us to look to do that. So that, I think that would sort of directly affect the work of the subcommittee. So I did want to mention it. I don't know if it's going to pass or not, to be honest. You know, you don't know what the board's going to do, but if it does, then I think that the subcommittee would have to work with the policy committee fairly closely to make sure that, you know, all those kind of planets are in alignment there. So we can definitely tweak what we are doing locally and what works for us locally. You know, their suggestions are just their suggestions, but they do make sure that you are doing what is legal. You know, what is up to date by law. So.
All right, good stuff. So the next item on our agenda is, was there anyone else that wanted to be a part of that committee?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Would you like us, is there a certain format that you would like our responses in? Just however we put it together?
So I would like to be a part of that committee.
Okay, and your name, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, Gail Tabor. Gail
Gail.
Tabor.
Hey, Gail, how are you?
I'm good.
Good to meet you.
You too.
What did I write down? I think it was here. Gail. All right, and so next on the agenda is the organizational structure, and this is just the org chart for the district. And again, I apologize that this is not correct, and also that is teeny tiny. It's very, and this is not a touchscreen, my regular one is. So just talking about the structure of the district, just a little bit. As all of you know, the citizens of the district, I was going to say hires the Board of Education, but they don't. They elect the Board of Education. The Board of Education then, of course, selects the superintendent. My role is one in which I am interviewed and hired by the superintendent, but approved by the board. And then essentially that is the same process by which we identify principals for our schools. Parents sometimes are a part of that process. Teachers sometimes are a part of that process. But the superintendent makes the recommendation to the board, and the board approves those folks. And then, of course, principals then hire their staff. Assistant principals are approved by the board in a similar manner. Teachers are ultimately approved by the board that way, but it's a little less formal of a process. But that really is kind of the hierarchical structure. And then, of course, there are different folks in different divisions. You know, you've got assistant superintendents, you've got directors, you've got supervisors, you've got coordinators. Sometimes we have folks who supervise people, sometimes we have folks who supervise programs, that type of thing. So I think it's more of a traditional hierarchy, but I will offer you this, that I think that as, you know, with the advent of technology and email and in other ways to communicate with people, really that is a very, very level playing field. But typically, if there are concerns and they're brought to the board members either have those folks address them directly with the school, or the board member will kind of send that to the superintendent's office. If things come to the superintendent's office, they're typically sent back to the school if the school has not had a chance to address those. But there is a process by which a person can fill out a public parent concern for which the superintendent then responds to. Also, you know, we've talked a little bit about policy. We've talked a little bit, you know, just and how that goes in terms of, you know, that provides the governance for the district. We are, I would say, overall a pretty site-based managed district in terms of a lot of autonomy is found at the school level because we understand that our schools are very, very different. And we also understand the importance of input from our parents and our families and our teachers specific to that school. But there are things that run through our district in terms of common threads in terms of course, state standards, and right now we're working on adopting curriculums across the district in K through reading, which will be K-5 reading, and we're looking at doing some of those same types of things in mathematics as well. But a lot of decisions around instruction and programming really happens at the school site. And so if you wanted to know about a specific program, really going directly to the school would be the place where you could get the most immediate information. Also within our district, which I think is somewhat unique, is that we have specialty programs at all of our high schools. New Hanover High School has Lyceum, which has been there for a very long time. Hoggard High School has the IB program. Laney High School has their STEM program. And then Ashley High School has their Marine Science Academy. As you all know, we have 3 early colleges within our district, which is somewhat unique, 2 associated with Cape Fear Community College and 1 associated with UNCW. And then we also have our Career Academy at Mosley, which is a unique situation and setting. So what I would say is we offer a lot of choice to our families in the district, but mainly those decisions about how programs are delivered really happens at the school site. So we understand as a result of that, there may be certain decisions that are not consistent across the district. And we understand with some of those inconsistencies, it is very likely that we're going to see inequities in terms of resources or opportunities. And I think part of what we do is to have a conversation about how to build better systems in terms of ensuring that just because you attend this school or you live in this neighborhood, there are not opportunities that are afforded to you that aren't otherwise available to you. So that's just a little bit about the kind of navigating the district, but I'd love to hear from other people's perspectives. Does what I've shared with you sound like your experience, or just am I talking alien speak? But I would love to hear your perspective, your experiences. And I know some of you are school-based people, so it would be great to hear it from your school-based perspective, and then some of you folks are just folks who are part of our community. So I'd love to hear it from your perspective as well. Okay. So maybe we could do, if what I shared with you sounds reasonable, not that it sounds like it's right, or it's, it's easy to navigate, or it would be something that someone new to the district would automatically know how to, work through to have the same outcomes as someone who's been in the district 20 years. Not that it sounds like that, but if it sounds like, yeah, she probably is correct, can I at least get a thumbs up? I'm seeing, okay, all right. So then I think the question would be and not a question that we answered tonight, but I think a long-term question is, what do we want to see that's different? Because again, to be able to explain that to someone in such a way that they would be able to take advantage of it and leverage what I described in the same way as someone else probably would be pretty challenging. But that is our existing structure. So, if you have the, resources, knowledge, connection, understanding, time, ability, skill set, work structure that allows for it, then, maybe you know how to do that. But if all of or most of those things are absent, maybe it might be a little more challenging for someone else. So anyone interested in talking about what that might look like, or what we might want it to look like?
Meaning, what, I guess maybe clarify what you're asking. Are you asking to look at the site-based management issue, or like how we allocate resources?
So I
Or
would
both.
say probably a little bit of both. So, almost hearing from someone from a different perspective. So if we agree what I described probably could possibly be reality, then what might be, so this is our current reality, what might our desired reality be? And I think it would come into both pieces. So it would be, the site-based management piece, it would be the curriculum piece, it would be the access piece, it would be the resource piece. Just interested in your thoughts around that.
Well, everybody.
Y'all decide.
Well, I was going to say, well, for me, how is it working now? You know?
So like a benchmark?
Yeah, I mean, how is it working now? Are there problems, concerns that, maybe staff or the community or parents have with the way, a little bit of both that you're saying, with the site base and then the resources? I mean, are you getting feedback from the consumers that there needs to be a change? I guess for me, in order to say, let's go in and fix it, we would kind of have to identify what some of the problems are already, maybe.
So to answer your question, what I would say, looking at our district outcomes, it depends on who you are. I mean, I think it is working really, 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 really well for some and not so much for others. But again, it's very complex. And so to be able to identify any one independent factor that may lead more so than another, I think is a challenge. And then also it can be very, very situational. So for someone whom it works for today, it may not work for tomorrow.
So you have data or something that?
So I think it depends on what the question is. So if the question is, can you provide the number of complaints that you've received over the XYZ period, then the answer to that, yeah, we could. If you're looking for outcome data, how does this one group perform in comparison to that one group, we can surely provide you that. If you're looking at how does this specific subgroup of children access this program compared to this specific subgroup of children, then we can give you that. I mean, we can provide data for pretty much whatever question I think that we would want to answer, as long as it's more qualitative. Then I think we can get some numbers. Now, of course, it's not, it's more of a correlation, not necessarily a causation. So just because the data says this, that doesn't mean that causes that. But you can see, as one thing goes up, the other goes down, or as one thing goes up, the other, those types of things. But I mean, we have tons of data. Yes.
Specifically looking at site-based programs and how they're offered and who's allowed to get into them, I would like to see more of it being more of a district decision than just site-based. I understand why some of these decisions are site-based, but I do think that there are also people who kind of miss out on these opportunities when they're site-based, and people who kind of take advantage of maybe having more access and more opportunity with these programs. Specifically, if you look at Hoggart's IB program, you can, I don't know if this, like the accurateness of this, but I do know I had students who were not in the Hoggart district who were able to apply to the IB program and then get into Hoggart versus, say, being sent to Hanover, which was their district at school. These tended to kind of be more affluent, well-meaning students whose parents were able to provide the transportation to these programs. Whereas you look at some of the population that go to Hanover who didn't have that opportunity or those resources to apply to the IB program and then get into that school. So I would like to see, I think that's kind of like a gap that needs to be looked at and reevaluated when you're looking at your site-based schools.
So on the same point, I'm talking from my experience in my program, I'm trying to still figure out what the projection of the program, how much we wanted to grow it, how do we want to keep it healthy in numbers. So those things are still unanswered, and when we try to work towards that, we don't see like that support, or at least the idea of sitting and talking about it to start making a plan. So I don't know if I'm making sense right here, but it's like we starting a program, and I haven't seen, and I'm only there, this is my second year there, so I don't know the whole picture, but what I see, I'm the Spanish coordinator of the program. I'm supposed to have clarity on what's going on with the Spanish, how much, what is the end result of that, and I don't have it. And when I go to find the answers, to try to look for the answers, it's still no clarity. So we are, we might want to keep it middle school, we might not, or we want to keep it the way it is, but the way it is not healthy because the numbers are not going to add up in the end, then it's not going to be sustainable. So that kind of conversation, I don't know about the other programs because I'm just, as you say, site-based, but from here, the dual program is an amazing idea, and we want to keep it alive, but we need to put like projection, resources, intention. Now, trying to find those resources is very hard, and then we try to give these teachers the possibility to work in the same conditions as the English teachers, but there is no resources. And then we try to find them, and there is no money. And then, and then every time I go to coaches meetings, I go here, I go there, they don't even know we exist. So it's hard. It's hard to work against all those odds in the system. So if we are starting these programs, what is the projection of the program? We need to think all those things, the study of demographic feasibility, needs, and all that, having a plan in place when we are going to start these kind of programs, so then we can give the power to decide to make decisions. But there are some things that need to come from above because somebody thought of those things and have enough support to provide to this person that might not know very familiar with this kind of programs.
Okay. So kind of from the two things that I'm hearing is, what I described really was more of a bottom-up in terms of how decisions are being made, and where I'm hearing is more of a top-down. So more clarity around programming, and then more district-level decision-making when it comes to program admittance and things of those natures. So those are my kind of two takeaways from this discussion.
Well, and if I can add to that, what I think I hear you both saying is that they need to be, you want to be plugged in more, and you want that program to be plugged in more. So there has to be some connection to central office or to that decision-making structure to help with the support, more so than you feel like there is now. So there is some shared vision there. And I guess same with.
In the same aspect
okay.
of admittance into the program, it's still blurry. How can we want to be fair. We want to be equitable to everybody. Of course, because it's a special program, there are some conditions, but we still want to provide access to everybody under some conditions. So that is still not unclear. We don't want to be unfair again. So if we make one decision now, can we sustain that decision next year? We need to talk about that and put it somewhere together so we all talk the same conversation. When some parents come to ask us, can I take a sixth grader into the Spanish program? We say, we don't know, to be honest. Because if it is a Spanish speaker, yes. But if they don't have enough English, no. So it's very, but then maybe we can take it if something has happened, but what is that else that it needs to happen? And where can we go to ask that kind of questions? Because that we don't want that to be against us later. Oh, you were unfair here because you didn't do this that we didn't know we have to do. So to have that clarity in all those regards, and I know it's almost impossible, it's very hard, but we need to try to have that to be fair.
The connection.
All right, next on the agenda, I wanted to go through, and there's quite a bit the work group has been doing, but I wanted to go through it pretty quickly. So we have created a Google site, and I did share this with all of you, so you have access to this agenda. If you're a district employee, it should be easy peasy getting connected to this. If you're not a district employee, and you want internet access during these meetings, let me know and we can set that up for you each time. But you do have access to this if you've got a Gmail account, because I think it's, and you can surely look at this after the meeting, but we do have a Google site that lists the resources that we've used and we've shared. And so this is that, battery is running low. Where's that cord? Down here.
Good. Yeah. I was off most of last week. So, okay. I love going, but I hate coming back because I'm playing catch up. And then I had to find a meeting all day for my EDs. Well, not all day. On 1 to 4. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, man, so, but,
Sorry about that. We now have juice. Yay. That was a little scary. So this is the Google site. I'll click on it real quick. And so here we've listed, we've got a couple of drop-down tabs. Our agendas and meeting notes, if you're interested with that, you can surely go and take a look at those. We do have a resources page where we continue to add to it, and then we've identified some of the professional development that we've been a part of. And this is being updated as a part of our work. Also, sorry, this is the one I want. We have been operating off of what I call an articulated what. So it was a plan that we put together very early in the process. And so it talks about the implicit bias training for principals, for teachers that we're still currently working on, despite best intentions book study. That was for principals, culturally responsive teaching the brain book study. And right now, this is a year-long book study that we're engaging in with James Ford, who's pretty phenomenal. If you don't know him, if you get a chance to Google him, and that is with our principals, and that has been pretty impressive. Groundwater training, the description there, phase 1, our race equity discussion series, cultural competency training, which we've kind of linked into our implicit bias training. And then each month we do principal touch points with our principals at our principals meetings so that we recycle equity to the top of that agenda every month. So there's not a month that goes by where we're not addressing the issue of equity, looking at whether, you know, having culturally responsive instructional practices in your classroom, having a curriculum that reflects the learners that you have present in your schools. This is a link to the Equity Collaborative, which is the group we're looking at working with for the implicit bias training. This is just a link to the book study that we did with the work group. Last month, we had a presentation on HR recruitment and processes. I mentioned the book study with James Ford. Some of us attended the Color of Education Conference. We are engaging in the Race Equity Discussion Series, which are monthly conversations and meetings we have with folks that are phase 1 trained. And we have different facilitators for that. I've facilitated a session, Sean has facilitated a session, and we have other folks who are signed up to facilitate upcoming sessions. We've had discussion around our strategy for student engagement, despite best intentions. I did a blog post, and then we did a draft of our mission statement. So this is what we've done, a synopsis of what we've done since we began this work, I want to say maybe in March of last year. So those are the things that we have gotten to. Any questions around that work? I know it was pretty quick. Yes.
Regarding the conference that you went to, will there ever be an opportunity for this group to attend those or get the information?
So, yeah, so the Color of Education Conference was pretty unique. It was a one-day conference. It was on a Saturday. It probably filled up the first day of registration. And we were very fortunate. It was myself, Cherry, Tyler, Miss Adams, and then Christy Howe, who's a teacher at Bradley Creek, that we were able to get in. And did we have to even pay for that? Was it free? Did we do a registration?
Was it $75 or something?
So it's $75. And it was with Tanase Coates, and he actually gave us a copy of his book, and he read from his book, which, still makes me feel when I think about it. And so short and skinny to that, what I would say is, I don't know that we would send folks to conferences, but when we bring the training here, we would definitely make a place for you at that training. If there is a conference that I think, we would have the funding or the support for folks to go, then we surely could have that conversation. But I think our emphasis in really would be to bring the training to Wilmington so that we could touch as many folks as we could. The Color of Education, I think, was unique in the fact that it cost so little. It was someone that, to me, not quite Maya Angelou, but, kind of up there in terms of being able to hear him speak and to be able to connect with him. So I think it was worth that investment, because we rented a vehicle, there were no room charges, we got up, we drove up 5 o'clock that morning, that kind of thing. But if there is the opportunity for professional development, or if we're looking to go and do something, we would definitely want to be inclusive for the group as well.
I'd like to mention that I sent an email to everyone regarding the Finding Elijah video that we will be premiering next Tuesday at Snipes.
Yes.
So please, if you would like to attend, shoot me an email back and let me know.
So the next thing that's on our agenda is taking a look at what we have now as our draft mission statement and doing some work around that. So what you have on your table is a copy of that draft mission statement. And what I'd like for you to do, let's see. Oh, wait a minute, nope, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I apologize.
Yeah, we need to know what we're doing first.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So, no, I completely skipped the one. So the next item on the agenda is, so any questions about the work of the work group? I apologize.
Should we maybe speak a little bit, just so there's maybe a little bit of clarity, what they're looking at for the Equity Collaborative? I know we haven't decided on them, but that they know that we are looking at what's going to be the professional development for teachers district-wide.
So yes, do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
All right.
So we met, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now. We did a Zoom call with 2 individuals. One's based in Raleigh, one's based in California, and they run, that's correct, right? They run the Equity Collaborative, and basically what's entailing is it's going to be a 2-part, there's going to be 6 different offerings, but it's going to be one part that's offered 3 times, the second part offered 3 times for our teachers to participate in, and it's going to be via online, so live interactive. And we kind of went with them because they have we were looking at them because they're very well established, and we think it'll be a good way to get the conversation started, to start talking about equitable practices within the classrooms. They have substantial amounts of research-based evidence that shows that it works, and we're excited about it because we believe it's going to be a good way for teachers to start dabbling in it without being inundated to the point where they feel like, oh God, it's another thing on my plate. And I'm a teacher, so that probably helps. I'm a 5th grade teacher, so it might help to know that. But it was really good because Dr. Smith kind of said, we can heavily touch 50 people in the district, or we can lightly touch every teacher in the district and really start that conversation about why do we do this? Why is it important? And their mission is, why are we doing this work? Well, you want to educate every child. You want to make sure that every child is getting the education they need. You didn't get into public education to purposely, disenfranchise and not teach every child. So we really like their mission statement. We felt strongly about them. Yeah.
Anybody want to add anything else to that?
I think just maybe if I could describe my take on kind of what we've been doing as a work group, and even the community discussions, is really enhancing awareness, developing depth that may not exist, or equipping people to bring depth to staff that may not have depth that they need. We haven't really made an item list of things to go try to conquer or fix, but it's been more of I don't know, more at the heart and the attitudes of people, just to try and build understanding and build hope for what it can be when we've reached what we need to reach, if that's fair.
And what I'll add to that discussion is part of the focus in the work that we're looking with the Equity Collaborative is really around implicit bias. I think that was a place where we landed on how could we touch and impact every child in our district, because a lot of the work we've done thus far has really been around racial equity, because we see such disparities between the outcomes of different groups of children in our district. But we also know that students who have been identified as having a disability, students who identify as transgender, experience those biases in their classrooms. And so if we could build a common vocabulary, if we could build awareness in every teacher, every licensed professional, which is in excess of 1,800 people around this, then we can almost, we would better position ourselves to improve every child's condition almost immediately. And that is my optimism talking there. And so, again, I must have said it really nicely for you to remember that, Tyler. So really, we could, deeply train 50 people, but, 50 people trying to touch 26,000, as opposed to making sure that we elevate the awareness and the consciousness of 18 to 2,000 people so that they can impact 26,000, was just where we landed really with that work. So, yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of how to put it in my head to say it out loud. But you, fifth grade teacher, what's your name? Forgive me.
Tyler.
Mr. Tyler. Hey, Tyler, how you doing? A lot of things that you said, I have sitting in front of my eyes. First, I heard something about evidence research based. It's a curriculum that y'all seen that you want this in the hopes of bringing it to the city to give teachers a better understanding as into how to connect the work to the students.
So it's not curriculum, really, it's based in practices. It's
Okay.
based in, like how, so they have a lot of data just to show that there's a lot of inequity within education and how to tackle it. So it's not necessarily a curriculum, it's not something to be introduced to the students, it's more about changing the mindset of teachers.
Okay.
Their implicit bias and kind of the motto, I've always said, I don't know if this is something the district will say, I've always said, how can you possibly tackle implicit bias if you don't even know you have it?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's more about hitting the teachers and their mindset of like, hey, these are things that you might do subconsciously or in some cases consciously, and this is how we need to start turning the tide on that. Because if we can't change the mindsets of our teachers, how are we going to create an equitable education for our students?
Okay, thank you. That's exciting. The only question that I have about that is that after that particular training is introduced to those teachers, a relationship that's kind of like a deeper dive. So we have amazing teachers in New Hanover County, right? But we have teachers who are connected but it's still a disconnect. So after they go, some of them, let's say the 50, out of the 50, the 25 go through these trainings and they have a better understanding of it. Do they have like a certain part that they have, that somebody will come in and teach them how to implement it in the classroom setting? I'm just asking because I'm a teacher and.
So if I could speak to that,
Okay.
so the expectation there is, so there's part A and part B. And so we understand that there's the initial learning, and then there's the opportunity for practice, and then there's that secondary piece that goes back and reinforces it.
Okay.
So while we're doing this for teachers, and it's going to be, our goal is to touch every one of them, so all 1,800 of them. During that same time, what principals are doing, principals are actually getting that deep dive, because we know that if we're going to change, we're working on changing the beliefs and the mindsets of teachers, but we also know that in order to change the culture of the school, we have to have principals who have this deep understanding to lead that change.
Okay,
And
that's my
so
next question.
principals are engaging in a year-long book study with James Ford. And some of my colleagues have likened it to being in a graduate level course. Because, do you know James Ford?
Yes.
Okay, so then he doesn't play.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
he is real, not for real,
Yes,
like
he's
real.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is what he is taking our principals through and engaging our principals in. And so we believe that we're going to provide our principals with the skills and expertise to really lead this work in their schools once we've provided their teachers with this foundational knowledge, this common language, this common vocabulary, and this elevated understanding. Because, and again, Tyler, you said it very, very well, teachers aren't able to address implicit bias, and they don't recognize that it even exists within themselves. So I think that is the beginning spot. So, if I can give you a visual, this represents our baseline. We want this to represent the district's baseline after the training at the very least. So we're going to elevate everyone at the same time.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Tyler. Appreciate it.
All right. Any other questions just in regards to the work group? So what I'd like to do now, and I apologize I skipped over this, is what is the work of this committee? And so in front of you, you have some sticky notes. And what I'd like for you to do is to take maybe just 3 minutes. Well, let's do, 3 minutes should be enough. 3 minutes for you just to jot down on the sticky notes, just to yourself, what you believe the work of this group would be. If you need something to write with, just let me know and we can get you something like a pen. All right, questions about what I'm asking you to do?
Can you say it one more time for me?
So if you will write down on sticky notes just what you believe the work of this work group should be. Just like I've given you like the work that we've done in our work group, but what should be the work of this committee? And I'm going to give you 2 minutes. As many things, like one idea on each sticky if you can. Okay, you won't believe it, but I gave you 2 hours, so I apologize. I know I was going a little, so I'm like, wow, this is slow.
Yeah. That was my first one. Policy approval. And then recommendation, but also we have to be advocates. Well, advocates for advocacy.
20-second warning. I can do the Jeopardy sound. Not well. All right, so what I'd like for you to do is with the person next to you, have a conversation, same question, what do you believe the work of this committee is? So share your stickies, you guys, and then see if you can identify 2 or 3 things between the two of you. Now, if you only have one thing between, like you have one, the other person has one, that'll be easy. But have a conversation, and I'll give you 3 minutes for that conversation.
My name's Sean. What was your name? Karen. Karen.
No,
My name's Sean. Nice to see you again. I do not. I work at GE, and I've got 2 little ones in the school system, and eventually a third will join. But right, yeah. So my work like. I kind of feel like you get what you measure, and so as a committee, I thought we could do SMART goals with a goal to first go after and identify policies, like Tyler was saying, you don't necessarily know implicit bias, and so from our perspective, go over policies that can be barriers to diversity, equity, and inclusion, because there are sometimes reasons why there are inequities, and understanding the reasons behind those. Yes, I think that's exactly the same thing. Is like zero in on what some of the drivers are beyond just, because there are drivers beyond just implicit bias. Like I think that sometimes people make decisions and they think they're making the best decisions from a certain perspective, but they don't necessarily see the implications. And then my second one would be to make recommendations to either change those policies or to replace them entirely. And then the third was just an accountability, like unless somebody is held accountable to a result or they're never going to change, because change is not comfortable for people. And so just kind of trying to provide that motivation beyond it's the right thing to do, because I think people know what the right thing to do is, but it's hard. And so how to make it.
And why aren't they doing the right thing?
Why aren't they doing the right thing? Understand that and just incentivize it somehow. Like it's So what were yours? Yeah, equitable.
It's basically just.
Right. Yeah.
And then I have oversight.
Of policy implementation. I think that this happens so often, is that people write policies that are very well meaning, but just do not end well when they're implemented, because we're humans and we don't have unlimited resources. So I completely agree. And that kind of goes along with accountability too. So I think that we've got.
Whether these two kind of go together.
Yeah, I think that they all do.
Yeah, because this one is pretty much similar to this one. I just,
Right. But it's pointing it back to
because this is my thing, build a culture.
Right. Because the culture is driven by the top. And so unless the top really embraces the culture, we're not going to be able to get everyone on board. And Dr. Smith said that with the whole principle thing. Unless you get administration to believe in it, they will not lead their team to do this.
Okay, so what I want you to do now is you 4 come together and do that again.
Okay.
And then you 6 come together and do that again. So all of us do.
I'll just switch over here.
Well, it's probably, I think they might, we could do it like that.
So our desired goal would be to have this be 2 to 3 things.
Yes, but I don't know if that means.
2 to 3 things from all.
I don't know if that always means bringing them to the meeting.
Yeah, but I guess I'm just,
Mm-hmm.
So like, how do we elevate?
When'd you send the email?
Right.
Okay.
Resend on it?
I could, do you remember the title?
Finding Elijah.
That's what I searched, but I couldn't find it, so I guess.
Oh, search the name, Caress, C-A-R-E-S.
We need to move in front of them.
CARESS, right? Glorious Film Festival, that's the one, okay.
We're still like trying to get it include parents and student voices input in our work.
And what we mean by that is being students and advocates for the students and parents.
And I'm actually more like,
Bringing them into
like
it.
I need them I need a kid to be a part of this.
Yeah.
To tell us like what their experience. Edit revise policy language for multiple critical levels. Lindsay. So what, do we have one about policy?
Here it is.
So we have evolve policy procedures of the district to be equitable.
So, and so this one kind of went with which one, of addressing inequity in each school. So I think
To
that
create more continuity. I sit all day. They're connected. Thank you though.
they're connected,
I
but
think
they're,
policy needs, you start with policy, right? 'Cause
so,
policy
but,
is
you
like-
know, so we decided that they were connected, even if they're kind of not exactly.
ambitious, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
I heard somebody say something about
We couldn't have got it all.
everybody doesn't say.
Yeah, just being advocates for the parents. and students.
What'd you say?
Wouldn't that go along
With that policy and
I
accountability?
like that.
Establish measurable and meaningful goals.
Oh, we got that one.
Measure growth. Improve where we are today,
And not
measure
just,
growth.
not just measurable, because we were talking about, and I added the word meaningful, because if we say increase graduation rates, if you increase by one, is that meaningful
Right.
to that one person?
Yeah, that's a good point.
But to the community, is
So you establish goals based on case history, or how will we determine?
So, yeah, it's
Yeah,
meeting.
because there should be a goal, like you say, okay, we want to increase 25%. And here's where we get this from, not just some fictitious number, but we looked at recent case history, and then we looked at graduation across the board and compared it to other states or other regions or something like that.
I don't know if it's really good or not, but provide experiential knowledge. That's like as our committee. That, I would see that as a role that we would have.
To them, how do we?
To the committee members, you mean?
Well, to the community. How are we on time? I don't know.
To address.
Anyway, that might be.
Well, that kind of goes along with, I think that kind of goes along with this.
Mm-hmm, doing well. We're almost,
Yeah, and
yes, another minute would be great.
So, I think that, I'm sorry.
Go
But I
ahead.
was in there. But the impact on who we're talking about, you know, who is it that we're trying to impact here? And actually using those groups and using those.
Students of color.
Yes.
Students are
Understand it, right? It goes back to that
making
navigation
sure we're being inclusive.
Because I can think about, you know, because I want to mention this, but I can think about,
We can focus on one and we just get, you know, students of color where they need to be, but we'll be back here in 10 years trying to get the rest back.
Or even sooner, you know, yeah.
Well,
Has everyone here done the groundwater?
I've done phase one, I haven't done that.
then, you know,
The thing about groundwater, like, even if I fix that one little.
Yeah, I can see that like we're making.
Right. You gotta fix it, yeah.
People are listening and hearing them as value to them.
Research discover new evidence-based supports for schools that are based on their students' needs.
on that committee, for somebody with my voice on that committee representing.
So when we think about all the groups that we just mentioned, should we think about, okay, and I don't have a specific time, but for this calendar year, this quarter, we are focusing on LGBTQ rights versus, and I don't know if that's the right way, but versus trying to do it all across the board at once and losing focus. Sorry. Oh, does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't think I think you have to, if you don't start with, yeah, because. And you gotta bring them all to the table. Yeah.
I do agree, I just don't want us to go off of something. Yeah, get too broad and then not be able to.
That's the mistake.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
I think that's an important point. Is that the root versus trying to trim up the branches.
Everybody is going to have 3 votes.
Yeah, except to fix the water.
Okay, everybody will have 3 votes. And what I'd like for you to do is read 2 or 3. Everybody read either your 2 or your 3, and then we'll come back through and we'll vote on them. Okay? And those things.
We have a whole table full.
But can we put these in
Those
separate?
things that you have identified,
So this is policy.
your
This is
top 3 are what we identify as our top vote getters will define our work. And of course, we can always revisit this at a later date and time, but this is how we'll begin.
Yes,
So
I
this
definitely.
is policy.
All right,
This is
how we-
measuring.
All right, so we'll begin with the group to the right, so you'll listen to them as they read out their top 2 or 3. How many do you have? You have top 2 or 3?
We have 3.
3, okay, first one.
So our first one was look at the policies and evaluate them with a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay.
And look at possible barriers that policies may be creating. So that's an overall policy bucket. The second one was this was building a culture of equity, inclusion, and diversity, with the recognition that culture, to your point earlier, comes from the top. And if you help that person at the top build that culture, that will flow down to the people that are actually delivering the instruction and reaching the kids every day. And then when somebody at the top moves on, there will be somebody to rise up to that occasion that has a similar value set.
Okay.
And then the third piece was community involvement, bringing our work to the community and being transparent about them so that they understand how we're trying to help that, that issue in the community.
Okay, can I get those 3 from you?
Sure, yeah, okay.
Do you all have anything to add to that?
Somewhere down there.
Karen and Andy?
Yeah, did I summarize that okay?
Yeah.
We have measurement.
I think the only thing I would add is the procedure piece to the policy.
Yeah.
The procedure piece would inform the work.
So policy.
I'm gonna borrow your paper.
Advocacy for so that would be 4 for the students.
Yeah, yeah.
All
Well, we
right,
just
so
say family, or
from
we say
our
family?
middle group, how many did you have, 2 or 3? 4.
That's not what I had.
Going above and beyond.
Okay, so
So I
again,
think
the
we
question,
could
2
put them in
or
3
3?
buckets. 3 buckets.
3, all right, all right, so go ahead and read yours.
So we had to evolve policy and procedures of the district to be equitable, change and revise the language of our policy from multiple critical lenses. That was 1 policy. Then we had 2, measurement. So we wanted to improve where we are from today, so measure our growth and establish measurable and meaningful goals. And we want to make sure that is measured. Make sure like you can see where we are today, and I want to see where we are in 6 months. And then make sure we are inclusive of, identify who we are being inclusive for, which is, of course, all of our students and our families, and advocating and allowing the input from students.
Okay, all right, so let me get your 3.
Oh my gosh, that's not so many notes.
That's 1.
We kind of put them all together.
Getting the same thing.
Yeah.
We word it differently.
Right.
And then where's the,
Here was a who.
Yeah, I just put student and parent advocacy. Is that
And I'm
simple
gonna
enough?
put your policy one next to your policy one. So your.
My policy one was this one. This one.
Jerry, we might have to get some tape for the stickies. They're fighting back. Okay? All right, and then our last group. Yes, 2 or 3.
We've got 3. We kind of talked about it. We were just saying we're definitely more the action sides. Like we came up with like what we thought would be good action steps. So we said plan to provide support and accountability through the process of the implicit bias training. Strive to ensure barriers to equitable practices and equitable outcomes are overcome.
Say that again. Strive to what? Barriers?
Strive to ensure barriers to equitable practices and equitable outcomes are overcome.
Over. Okay, I thought you were putting some barriers in.
I apologize. She wrote it beautifully and I butchered it. And then I said, look at district, and this was one that we said was definitely more of an action step, but look at district programs to recruit more teachers of color, which I know we've talked about in our work group, but I think definitely making that a district issue or a district. That's got to be something I think that we start working towards is really getting more teachers of color in the classroom because that's going to help us overcome a lot of these barriers, I think.
Okay, all right, so let me get your 3. So now everyone has 3 votes. And so when I read them out, and if I hack it up, you please, because these aren't like complete sentences. Let me know, and you can elaborate if I get it wrong. So you've heard them all, and so let's start first with this first one, policy. If everyone believes our work is around policy, and evolving policy and procedures in the district toward equitable outcomes, and again, with the goal of identifying policies and procedures. So if you want to vote that that's a part of our work, you want to use one of your votes for that, then raise your hand.
It's unanimous.
13. Okay. All right, so the next one is look at district programs to recruit more teachers of color. And I'm just pinging across these. So if you want to see that as part of the scope of our work, then raise your hand.
How many votes do we have?
You have 3. And you have 3 votes.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
What would that look like for us as a group?
We have some suggestions.
Could that not be a part of policy?
It could.
But I don't want to vote on it. I just want to get clarity on what that would look like from our.
Go ahead. Same HBCU.
Okay, so I think part of what we've talked about, part of what we've looked at, and she sees it from her side of mental health therapists, is we recruit so much from UNCW. We put so much, we pull a lot of our teachers from UNCW, but then when you look at UNCW, they're by and large white. So then that becomes the problem, is that we can't recruit teachers of color, or we have a difficult time getting teachers of color because we pull so much from UNCW. So looking at branching out and trying to build more relationships, either through alumni associations with our HBCUs, NCANT is the top HBCU in the country.
You brag.
Getting more involved with those alumni organizations and trying to incentivize teachers of color to come, because ultimately kids want to see success that looks like them. And if we can put more teachers of color into the classroom, then I think we're.
And the reality is we have I'm sorry to interrupt you. The reality is we have the resources to do it, so it's an excuse.
Right.
Like we can't, it's convenient, UNC White is here. I don't want to hear that.
Right.
North Carolina has some of the best educational institutions in this country. There is no reason why we don't have more people of color, therapists and teachers in this county. It makes no sense.
Yeah. So I agree with that, but I also think that's a policy issue. That if you write the correct policies or adjust the correct policies to address those issues, that
It's kind of like a how, it's kind of like a how.
All right, so what I'll say is let's let your votes do walk. And, and if we believe it's policy, then we'll be, if we choose policy to be our work, which, we got like 15 people in the room, 13 people chose that, then that could be a direction. If we think it needs to be standalone, then let's vote for it to be standalone. All right, so look at district programs to recruit more teachers of color.
I do have one question.
Yes.
So, I'm all for everybody college. Man, y'all cool, homecoming was lit. But, I graduated from Elizabeth City, and then I went to like 2 other HBCUs as well. The recruitment, right, is sounds amazing. But when we talk about diversity and equity and inclusion, as a African American woman who's a teacher, when they get here and they go through different things that might impact the culture of the school, what's gonna keep them here? Because
Roadblocks.
as a teacher, if only I could say how I really feel as a teacher, they're not gonna stay. And they're not. So resources are cool, but it's gotta be.
Oh, yeah, no, there's definitely more action steps that need to be done. I mean, I almost left this place.
Me too.
Like, whew, buddy. Brandon Higbee, shout out. Like, that's the only reason I was
Right.
Yeah, so yes. we feel we're here. That needs to happen.
So how many other, because I sort of see that as a how to fall somewhere, you know what I mean? To address the diversity, equity, and inclusion. I sort of see that as a how rather than a policy. I would love to vote for that, is the reason why I'm trying to, figure out where to go so I don't lose my vote on something else. Because, I mean, one thing that you said was, I don't know how the policies are, but a lot of times you cannot just write in hire people of color, because some people may look at that as discrimination. So I think some of the wording that you just used, like trying to recruit from HBCs or something, you can do the wording however. So I'm just thinking that perhaps that could be a how. Now, I will vote for that, but I just wonder how many other, that we have, because I see it more as a how do we address.
Well, and, we get to define and determine our work. And again, like I said, we may decide that this is our scope of work tonight, and 6 months down the road, we decide that we need to shift our scope of work. And so we can go through this activity again at that point, if that is what we choose to do as a collective. Yes.
I could make a suggestion, and this is not a good suggestion, I'm open to hearing them, but rather than voting on which things stay, I'm wondering if we can combine like items or figure out which things are steps that fit under larger ideas.
Yes.
So
That's
it's
what
not
I'm
about
talking
getting
about.
rid of
That's
anything,
kind of
it's
what-
about
That's what
organizing
I'm
what
saying.
we have, and if there are
Like, that's
things that are somewhat related,
Mhm.
writing a new sticky that encompasses both of the items.
And even prioritizing, like, why can't we leave everything and just decide what can we tackle first? Like, I see that that teacher diversity issue as a subset of the system culture. So if you pull those two together, we're going to address both of those at some point, because we have to. So I don't want to lose any of these things, because I think that they're all related.
Yeah.
I want to keep them all.
Well, and we definitely can. I guess for me, it was about expediency in terms of time and getting to a place where we could start. But, let's see, we've got 9 minutes.
I agree with you.
I'm sorry.
We have to have, I'm sorry, Tyler. We have to have like a starting point. We can't just say, okay, we're gonna leave them. So if we are voting and doing our 3 votes, then let's have those 3 things that we focus on, and then everything else kind of doesn't go to the bottom, but it's a next step.
Yeah.
Trash. It
So,
doesn't
nothing goes in the trash.
Yeah, I
Right.
completely agree.
Green umbrellas.
It's an iterative process. It's very much an iterative process. So I'm willing to do whatever the group would like to see. So I've heard like collapse, and I've heard kind of move forward and kind of identify kind of our 3 big, buckets.
I
can't see that, but for those of us that can, is there clearly defined, like you already named 2 that would be a bullet and a sub-bullet. So is there more of that on there, on that piece of paper?
My brain works a lot differently than other people's, because I'm an accountant, so I don't know if I'm the right person to ask, but I would say that, like, to me, school culture and the teacher recruitment, to me, go together.
It's an action item under.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
That's
and
what I would
the,
think.
the SMART goals we had with policies and procedures, but that might be its own thing.
So, yeah, I kind of like your dividing up the SMART goals from the policies and procedures. And I forget who it was, someone over here mentioned measurability and accountability. I feel like SMART goals more goes under that. And I do think that piece is very, very important because in any job, you get what you measure. And if principals are measured on certain things for schools, that could be driving some of these culture things that are causing implications that.
But a goal could be.
Yeah.
More teachers
Absolutely.
of color.
Yep,
Like
absolutely.
if we're talking about Gregory, recruiting from the actual countries where they are Spanish speaking, rather than going through an organization. So doing something like that where we're recruiting out of the country, but developing those relationships. So, you know, going to the historically black colleges, you know, going there and recruit and developing the relationship within the education departments, like we have with UNCW, doing that. There are a lot of things we can do, and that could be a SMART goal. That's an actual goal. You know, we want a certain, you know, percentage, and I hate to use percentage because you want to go, you know, what if you want to go over, you know, but to grow our diverse base, I think is what we have to do. So that's, you know, that's a goal. So I see this all kind of,
Well,
I'm a terrible person to set goals with, because I do this.
so what I'm saying, I agree, because just like what you said, Sean, about the SMART goals, but then at the bottom you had identify policies and procedures. So it's almost like two things, but they were on one sticky, so I had to put them kind of one place. But I agree with you that what you're saying overlaps with the measurement and goals.
Right.
So it's kind of like if we can decide on the three big pieces, so, you know, if I were a voting person, I probably would have chosen the policies and procedures. I would have, and now I'm influencing the outcome, so I apologize. I probably would have chosen the measurement, and then I probably would have chosen the piece that deals with the culture that also brings in the school community piece. So those would be my three buckets. And then it would be about assimilating everything under that. So then, once you've got those three pieces, then let's pull it back out. And so what does that look like? You know, how do we fan that out? But we didn't get there.
You just took us there.
I don't get to do that.
But I feel like, but we've already done that right here.
Yeah, we've just framed it.
We've already done
That's
that.
exactly what I heard in the room, but you just said it much nicer than all of us.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so what I'll say is, let me take all the stickies, because I want to capture all of that, because at some point it had some purpose and some connection. I'd love to take those and look for some themes, but right now where our three buckets are going to be around policy, going to be around measurement, and going to be around the piece of school culture and community.
I'm down.
Yeah,
I feel like
I
those
think
first two are most within the purview of a board committee. Am I wrong? Like to be able to pass to the board?
Yes.
I mean, how much else are we here going to be able to do other than to provide
We'll
those
be able to do everything.
recommendations?
You make a very good point around that. You know, we want to have something that when we throw it against the wall, it sticks. And I think talking about policy and talking about benchmarking against ourselves, against others, and against the standard will be very important, something that a board is interested in and something that the community is interested in. And then how do we engage the periphery with that? And that is through the school culture and then the community involvement piece as well. So, okay, all right. Y'all feel like y'all did some work tonight?
Yeah.
All right, good stuff, good stuff. Now, what I'd like for you to do is, I'm gonna send you, actually, I think you have access to the mission. I want you to think about the mission the same way that we did, this activity today. But if you can, if maybe your thought partner in this work, have a conversation with them about the mission, and where we will begin is kind of where we're ending here, but we're gonna pick up with that mission. That's gonna be really high on our agenda for next year, week after next.
Did we share everybody's contact information? Like, if anyone wants to like call each other, talk about anything. If y'all want to, and a sign-up sheet, leave your contact information, that would be helpful.
So I
And if
think-
you don't want to, you don't have
I think
to.
everybody has everybody's email
Yeah.
through through the invitation. But yeah, definitely feel free to share your phone number. I'm not a talker.
I text. People
Yes.
can.
And I'll do everything. So, I cannot thank you enough for being here tonight, and for what you have given to this, and I look forward to our work together. So I'm gonna collect those stickies, let me get my main stickies.
Yes. Share the document with you if you want to share it with those on the call. It's like another
Okay.
Oh, yes, thank you, I appreciate that.
I'm trying to think of Twitter version.
These work just all over our leftover one.